Shalom Aleichem. My name is Greg Wall. I'm a member of the RCA Executive Board and Rabbi of Beit Chavarim Synagogue in Westport, Connecticut. This past Shabbat was bookended by two jarring moments. We found out just before Shabbat that Harav David Feinstein was nifter, and immediately after Shabbat, we heard about the passing of Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. Both events surrounded the powerful First Aliyah we read at Mincha, the Torah's first extended exposition on the loss of life. In the deaths that preceded Sarah from Adam Arishon to Terach, including the fratricidal demise of Hevel, no emotion was expressed by anyone, nor in the narrative voice of the Torah. People were born, people died. But in Parshat Chayei we read, Vayavo Avraham lispod l'Sarah livkotah. Avraham came to give a hesped and cry over her. Death involved more than the end of the deceased. It was a challenge for the living, engendering a visceral, emotional reaction. Avraham's are the Torah's first recorded tears shed over the loss of a loved one. In his collection of Torah insights, Kol Dodi, Rabbi David Feinstein reflects on Vayavo Avraham lispod l'Sarah livkotah. He was challenged by one of the Baal HaTurim's explanations for the small chaf in the word livkotah. The Baal HaTurim wrote that the small chaf indicated that Avraham did not cry excessively, as Sarah was quite old and had lived a full and holy life. Reb David questioned why the Torah would reduce dafka the chaf and not the bet, since bacha begins with bet. He said that every time a righteous person dies, no matter how old, we still cry. We cry for the deceased because they can no longer do all of their mitzvot and accumulate even more merits. We cry for ourselves because the righteous person is no longer among us to suffuse the world with their influence. Reb David suggests another reason for the small chaf. Citing Rashi's quote of the Midrash explaining that just as Sarah was without sin at age 20, she was without sin in her old age as well, he made his own observation. The chaf was a recognition of her entire lifetime of 127 years. The Torah writes a small chaf to show that the vitality and righteousness at 20 years old lasted her entire life into old age, the enthusiasm of youth. Yes, Reb David in his 91 years lived a long, meaningful life, but we will greatly miss his brilliance, his humility, his role as one of the last links to the great Eastern European rabbinic tradition. Until his recent illness, he showed a youthful energy in maintaining an incredibly full schedule, devoting day and night to learning Torah and answering shilas, as did his father. Reb David's life was also worthy of the small chaf, a life worth crying over. Lord Rabbi Sachs left the world, like Moshe Rabbeinu, on his birthday. Unlike Moshe, he didn't get 120 years. He didn't get 91 or even 80. He left this world after only 72 years, but in that relatively short time was able to make a remarkable impact. His eloquent presentation of Torah ideas in a highly literate and refined prose took ideas and concepts spanning the depths of Jewish knowledge and made them accessible and highly relevant for a contemporary English-speaking audience. Ironically, one of his last recorded presentations, a podcast for Koren recorded less than 2 months ago, reflects on life and death. He talked about one of his favorite tools. I have one right here. What do you see? Most people inevitably say they see a black dot, not acknowledging the majority of the page, which is white. Rabbi Sachs pointed out human perception is focused on what is odd, discrepant, discordant. We take for granted what is always there. Our sight, our strength, our mobility. He exhorted that we should not take our lives for granted, teaching that although we consider death on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the Yom Tovim are about life. Sochreinu l'chaim, melech chafetz b'chaim, V'kotvenu b'tsefer Chayei. Lord Rabbi Sachs knew a lot about Ketiva. He wrote over 30 books. His battle with cancer stretched out over decades, with bouts in his 30s and his 50s before this last brave encounter. And yet, unlike many prolific writers facing cancer, he never wrote about this challenge. "I have never had a test of faith at any point," he said, "just the simple moments at which to say, Bi'ado of Kibruchi. And since we say it every day in Adon Olam, there was no need to write it in a book." He may have been a brilliant orator, a prolific writer, a powerful teacher, but he led by example, modeling a life of faith, the faith of Avraham Avinu and Sarah Imenu. It is a life worth crying over as well. And here we are, going into Shabbat Chayei Sarah. We are the people of the book, and our book uses death to teach about life. The full, impactful lives of Rabbis David Feinstein and Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichronim Livracha, like the life of Sarah Imenu, will continue to sustain and inspire us until we can join them, B'mera v'yameinu, B'Yerushalayim Habnuya. Thank you.